Hey everyone, you're joining us live for a 12-hour book launch for Write for Money and Power. This is hour 5, and I am so grateful to be having my next guest on, Michael Simmons. For those of you who aren't familiar with Michael Simmons and his work, Michael is the creator of the Substack Blockbuster Blueprint, a newsletter course built to help thought leaders and creators reinvent their process for an AI-first world and create content that actually cuts through the noise. He spent over a decade studying what makes ideas spread, running thousands of experiments, and writing long-form work that's been read tens of millions of times in places like Time, Fortune, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and more. Michael's whole thing is building a repeatable system for blockbuster thought leadership that's not just louder, but sharper and more alive. Michael, I'm so excited to have you here.
Likewise, it's really, really nice to meet you, Amy.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you too. So when you're thinking about like what creative power looks for you in 2026, especially in a world where the internet is both getting flooded with AI content as well as creators being supercharged by it, what does creative power look like for you this year?
Yeah, I feel like there's an internal and an external part. And I've been full time using AI for the past 3 years. And I think there's a way of using AI where you actually get de skilled and it almost makes you like a worse version of yourself, less authentic, let's say. But I also feel like a part that people don't understand is you can use it to be more creative than you've ever been. So if you ask it a basic question, it's going to give you a default answer. But there's ways of, I've had hundreds of hours of conversation this year with AI where it's just opening up completely new ways of thinking I've never experienced.
Yeah, and I think that is really neat because I think that there's a lot of options for creators who, and I know some people who are joining this call maybe are a little unsure about how to navigate those waters. But I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of potential that people don't even fully recognize about how AI can help us. But one thing I wanted to bring up is something that you said where thought leadership as we know it is coming to an end. So what do you think that most creators are still doing in thought leadership that's about to stop working?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I feel like we've had this 25-year run of the creator economy, where over time there's these core parts of it that have become essential. So it's like first the discovery of a feed that's chronological, so you can actually follow people and get all the content. Then it became algorithmic, and the feed is selecting what to show you. And then over time, there's different video and text and things like that. I feel like we're going from a feed era to an answers era where you already can see it. Have you used Google Answers?
I haven't. Can you explain what
Uh,
that is to people who may not know?
well, by the default, many of the time you search Google now, by default for many searches, it shows AI answer. And that's a profound thing and kind of scary in some ways because rather than it showing like a feed of content that creators have created and linking to them and showing their photo and you can follow people, it is showing an AI answer that is generated from creator content without compensating the creators and without kind of often showing them in the secondary real estate on the screen. So I feel like we're at the very beginning of that era. You can see that in X.com a little bit where there's trending and then it rather than showing the best real estate has a summary, AI generated summary of the feed. And so I feel like that's one aspect of the world we're going into. And another aspect is over the past 10, 15 years, there's been an explosion of content online. There's something called like Zuckerberg's Law. At one point, he was saying he observed that the amount of content online was doubling every single year. And we're just past the point this year where AI created more content than all of humanity combined.
Whoa.
So, it goes from 50% to 75 to 99 to 99.9%. So I feel like there's a lot of things that still really work well in social media, especially for top creators that are full time and the most skilled. But I do feel like we're in the beginning phases of a disruption of a creator economy.
Love that. And I think one of the things that is especially relevant to the people who are listening right now, and a lot of the people that I know in my community, is that we all came up in like the SEO blog era. Like even for myself, like my blog gets a million impressions per month from Google, and that is kind of like bread and butter for a lot of us writers. And so to hear what the things that you're talking about, and I've definitely seen that like Google summary of just summarizing a topic. But I also like what you said of like this idea of the answers kind of creator economy ending and instead having to move beyond that. And I think that that's really fascinating. One thing that I think is really great is that your newsletter is basically kind of like a course delivered through email with a lot of great learnings and things that you've discovered built around curation plus the application. What do you think people misunderstand about what good curation is as a newsletter creator?
Ah, that's a really good question. Uh, well, I would say that that's a really good question. I would say is for me, I'll just say what I do is a better, easier way of responding it. But there's just so much knowledge out there, and a lot of times people are only writing from their personal experiences, which is great because I feel like that's critical to unpack the stories, the implicit experiences, our unique voice. And I also think when we combine that with the best of what humanity has figured out, uh, then we can create something that really stands out from others. So personally, I like to, whenever I'm writing an article, like explore that topic from different fields perspectives, different people's perspective on that topic, from different time periods. So even like the creator economy and what I shared, that was a large synthesis for me to get it to say that. It was more me feeling like, man, the internet's changing. Like during the 2015-16 era, like every article I was writing on Medium was getting over 250,000 views. And then like there was a shift in the algorithm and suddenly it was getting a lot less. Before that, I had been writing for Forbes for a few years and developed my voice on Forbes. My average article was getting 10 times and 50 times the average Forbes article in terms of reach. And then there's a new editor there that came and said, okay, he wants to put his own mark on it. And so it's like, okay, now you have to write in this style. So I've observed that same thing happening because I've been creating content for so long over and over. And so what I share is kind of a synthesis of that from collecting lots of dots and then connecting them.
Yeah, and I like how, and I know a lot of writers who are watching right now. A lot of the questions that they often have is around niche, and I like how you kind of framed this idea of how you write through like a lens of experience, and like the experience is your niche.
Yeah.
If that feels accurate to you, and I think that that's really cool because it gives you are able to say things that are so unique just to you that no one else on the internet could say.
Yeah. I feel like I personally love like leaning into, I feel like we're in this era where creating content is with AI at scale. It's kind of scary that Google can generate billions of AI search pages per day. And they're pretty good. Like some people don't like the AI answers, but we just know they're going to get better and better. So that's a little bit scary, especially since Google has like all this behavioral data. They have the models, like same thing with YouTube, and X is an AI company, and Meta. They're all AI companies as well. So I feel like it's a good time for creators to take a risk and just be as unique as you can and take the risk of being yourself, basically. There's areas of things that we're afraid of sharing. The more we make ourselves cookie cutter, I think the more vulnerable we are.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that that's just a really good insight of like taking the risk of being yourself and being unique. So one thing that I think is really cool is that you're very like systems driven. Like you obviously had so much of this experience doing A/B testing of your work and seeing what is working with different audiences and different publications, and studied what does it actually mean to make content spread. Is there one counterintuitive insight about virality that most writers get completely wrong?
Yeah. Well, number one is I started off writing in college. I wrote for a few articles for Entrepreneur Magazine. I had a blog where I did 250 posts. And I grew up in an era where it's like I read Seth Godin, who posts every single day. And that was like a big idea that you just post every day, you're going to get momentum and grow. And that just did not work for me. And then I was like, okay, I spent like 2 years and hundreds of hours doing that. And then I took a break because I was like, okay, I'm not a good writer apparently. Then I did that again in 2012 and it like basically had a similar result. So it's like, okay, I tried again. I'm not a good writer. I'm not a bad writer, but I'm not enough to like something to spread really far. And then in 2013, I was invited to write for Forbes. I got an introduction there. And I knew could write good enough to get published on Forbes, but I really wanted to. I also was wise enough to know that just throwing out good enough work isn't going to spread virally. And how can you? I feel like, okay, sometimes people just throw around viral, but I feel like it is kind of a miracle that you could have an idea in your head, put it out into symbols and text, and then it can immediately go across the world, go into someone's mind and actually rewire their mind in a positive way. And then they could love it so much that they would share it with other people. But um, so I came across this book called Blockbusters by a Harvard researcher, and her core thesis was that when you look across all the categories of media, the number one strategy that works counterintuitively is creating the best possible content. So Avatar just came out and they get the best effects and the best actors and uh so creating a blockbuster movie is really hard to do, even if it is like a best strategy. The nice thing about I feel like with content is to create one of the best pieces of articles on any given topic is easier than ever. uh Not easier than ever, I should say, is much easier than creating a blockbuster movie. Even if it takes you 50 hours, if you spend 50 hours creating one of the best pieces of content on that topic and explaining what you do really well, you can make an incredible first impression. Uh, I would say
Love
the other
that.
thing that
Oh,
I've
sorry, go
learned
ahead.
is that um, it's also just different now. I think virality is very different. So I feel like when I was on Medium, I'm like, oh wow, I'm just a genius. I figured out this thing. Every article is doing really well. Sometimes even close to 1 million views per article. And then, like when the Medium changed the algorithm, I did realize that okay, part of it's actually based on the platform that you're on and having a way of creating content that aligns with that given platform. And Medium rewarded total time people spent reading the article as a high part. And so I think that's just another part of like it's based on the platforms as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what's really fascinating about what you just said is like you almost had to learn at every stage in your career. Even though you've had incredible success on Medium and these different publications, it felt like that you were having to learn new things and keep that learning going, which I think is really incredible. And this idea that virality changes based on the platform or what culture is rewarding. And I think that that's really cool and kind of shows that all writers kind of need that education still to find that relevancy. So one of the things that I think a lot of writers hear AI or AI first content or just AI in general and get either excited or existential. So in your view, what's the healthiest, most empowering way to relate to AI as a thought leader?
Man, you have really, really good questions.
Thanks.
Um, I've felt all of those things. I think it's weird. I feel like there's a lot of parts, in my opinion, that are immoral about taking all this creator content, putting it under fair use, creators not getting anything. I guess Reddit gets paid whatever $60 million per year, but the users aren't creating anything. And it's scary. Like I have gone really deep on AI safety, and I think the risk is much, much larger than people think, and it's way beyond deep fakes or job loss. And I think there's more potential than ever for it to, at the most optimistic side, create new science that then, if we can get cheaper energy and energy is input to everything, or if we can live longer, those can make a really big difference. So, holding all of those possibilities in your head is really hard. I'd say the first thing is a lot of times people collapse on one thing only. Like, okay, people get the ick feeling, it's immoral, and then they're just completely against AI. And I think it's good to feel that because I think there's some truth into it to understand it, but I still feel like it's good to be curious. And then I first learned about AI through a friend that's been full time with an AI safety nonprofit, one of my closest friends in 2020. And I also feel like it can get depressing feeling like you see a risk and you're focusing on it full time. And like, rather than the AI safety field growing, actually, in some ways, it's grown smaller, which is surprising when you think the AI is getting more powerful. That's been a shift. And then on the potential side, I think in my opinion, okay, I feel like there's different stances about how to. I think one is I've just chosen to go all in because I find it fascinating on every level. Like it makes you think different about what is consciousness, what is a human, what is intelligence, what is agency. I mean, these are the deepest questions of life, and the ability to have new answers or new ways of thinking about this are so there's like a philosophical angle. I actually wrote an article on this is my most speculative article, but artificial superintelligence and religion. I think it has profound implications for how we make meaning. So one way is to go all in and just explore from lots of different angles. And I feel like if somebody loves doing that and gets excited by that, then I feel like it's like you're kind of in a playground. And then uh, for other people, even just getting try to find ways that you can naturally engage with it as an enjoyable way where it expands, where you use it for a question, and then that gives you more ideas for questions and you get a good response. Trying to get into that feedback loop. Just to give you some examples, one of the big things that I did in the beginning on was like, I tried to integrate AI everywhere with the intention of becoming more creative, more smart versus like just it giving me answers. And so I'm 44, but just had my wife and we just had a newborn in November, and it's really had a huge difference on how I am as a parent when the baby does something that I don't understand, or is doing something I can have a back and forth. Or I just had this amazing experience where I just felt so connected to her, and like we weren't speaking things, I felt like I could just read what she was feeling and just be able to not only just have that experience and move on, but I feel like I can explore that at a deeper level and realize like, okay, there's this Harvard researcher who talks about like serve and return and as an concept. So I'm rambling here. You can probably tell I'm a little bit
No, no,
excited,
no,
but
no. I think this is really great. And I think that like, and I'm based in San Francisco and I came up as a TV writer. So I have friends on both ends of the spectrum of people in LA who are often anti-AI because of what's happening in Hollywood. And then people here in San Francisco who are obviously in the AI bubble. And I think that I really like that this idea of like understanding that there can be like moral concerns, safety concerns that we all have collectively and we should. And then there can also be a part of where this technology is here to stay. Let's explore it and see what is happening here and understand kind of like what's
yeah,
going
exactly.
on. And so it's like, it is tough. And I think that this conversation around like the philosophy and the morality of this stuff is very heavy, but on like a creator level, like it's here. And like, we're kind of having to reckon with both our emotions. But I love kind of approaching this as like curiosity. And if anyone in the chat has any questions for Michael, you can drop it down if you have them. I have some more questions for you. So I'll keep on going, but just want to mention that because I think that you got some really great insights that feel really fresh. And I can tell that you've done a lot of like really like deep thinking in this. But I want to circle back to the name of your Substack. Oh, sorry, go
Actually,
ahead.
Amy, can I just add
Yeah.
one more thing I just thought
Yeah,
of?
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
One of the things I'm excited about, just on a personal level, is I feel like there's incredible opportunity for how we make meaning with AI. So some people like there's a future of AI destroying the world or AI like it's going to be abundance. All the AI companies, that's now the magic word is abundance that they're creating. And I think sometimes people take on a meaning of people around them of what AI is, and then they take on a meaning that is overwhelming to them, makes them feel less excited about the future, feeling perpetually behind, loss of control. And I feel like it's a really big opportunity for each of us to actually get better at creating our own meaning rather than interpreting like the meanings. I feel like I listen to probably 2 hours of podcast per day and I try to be as diverse as possible on AI. And it's starting to get a little bit boring for me because it's really just like these few camps of people who talk about the same narratives. And then there's just a few narratives out of the hundreds, you could make hundreds of thousands of narratives. So why not create a narrative that gives us meaning, makes us feel good, where we react in ways that are right for the environment, the risk or the opportunity.
I think that's really well said, and we all can control our perception and trying to figure out how to approach things. I think that's awesome. And in the comments, Mary Beth Kaplan asks, "What is your favorite AI platform that you like to use?"
So Claude is my quick answer. But one thing I've been doing is what I call multi-prompting. And I have an article recently on my Substack about there's a shortcut you can do where if it's a deep question that I want the answer to, I feel like all the platforms are often leapfrogging each other in some ways. Like Google ones, Gemini is really good at the grounding and the research and the speed and large context windows. But it doesn't have conversation memory. So what I will do with multi-prompting is put the same prompt so I'll click a button, the Chrome extension. So it tiles the three windows, automatically opens the three browsers, and then I'll copy and paste the prompt into each one. And that's doing a few different things. They do give different answers. So you get to see like, oh, just lots of different ideas. And then number two, you get to know each model of where it is now. I think a risk sometimes people have, I don't know, I feel like we all have this with our parents where they get a high school version of ourselves locked in. And then it's like, no, I was like that maybe 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but I'm not like that anymore. And so sometimes people have an experience with Gemini, even from 6 months ago or something, and it's like, it's not very good, or it made this silly error. And now it doesn't. And now it's better in Claude in this way. So it's like having a relationship with a person in some ways, in that respect, that you want to always keep updating your connection and understanding of the thing, curiosity.
That's awesome. That's a really great tip, especially because all the models have their own personalities. I feel like it's definitely really interesting to see. Before we continue, I know we have another question in the chat, and Mary says also thank you for answering her question. Before we keep going, you're kind enough to be giving away one annual comped 12-month subscription to Blockbuster Blueprint. And so for everyone who's watching live, if you could put in one sentence what's one idea you wish you could share more boldly this year, and then after the questions are over that I have for Michael, then he'll go and pick the winner for the giveaway for the subscription that he's so kindly giving away. And then you can email the winner. He'll pick at the end of this live, and then you can email him your email address for that. So thank you for giving that away, Michael. And then in the chat, Kyle asked, and this is a great question: what are your favorite podcasts or news sources, and why?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm a really, really big believer in the wisdom of crowds. It's a great book called Wisdom of Crowds. There's a researcher, Scott Page, who I've interviewed a few times for Forbes about it. And the Wisdom of Crowds book starts off with this idea of like there's an ox. I think it's like this prototypical story, archetypal story of like an ox being weighed in the center of a town in the 1800s. And there's a few experts trying to guess the weight. And then there's the whole crowd, everyone guessing the weight. And the crowd outcompetes the few experts. And the reason is, even though they're not as expert, each perspective has something to offer. They see it from a different angle. And then the blind spots cancel each other out. And if we're in one area, we're just looking at anything from one perspective, we're always going to have blind spots. So if we're in just one field, we learn that word, we absorb the values of the field. We also absorb we get into a echo chamber where it's like it feels like there's lots of people talking and different things. And we're not missing it's an echo chamber where the same ideas are bouncing back and forth. So I try to think about what are all the different perspectives you can take on something. So that's where I'm thinking about the history of AI. What are the different, I probably thought about dozens of scenarios of AI. I've collected lots of different mental models for how you could think about futurism through weak signals, through extrapolating trends, black swan, second order implications. And so as I've collected lots of different perspectives, I get better at finding new perspectives that suddenly blow my mind. So for AI, there's the tactical ones of understanding how to do prompts and workflow automations and vibe coding. So that's more the tactical short term. Then there's the more philosophical people. And I feel like as a thought leader, that's been my approach as well. Is like it's surprisingly easy to just take in different perspectives, and immediately you have a perspective that no one else has. I did this with researchers as well, where I interviewed a lot of academic researchers in the past. And because I've been going across different fields, even though they've been focusing on what they're doing for a long time, they didn't know like ideas that were obviously adjacent in other fields. So, in terms of specific podcasts, I recommend one of my favorite ones is Dorkesh podcast. I'd say that's my favorite all one. He's a really deep thinker. He's really young, 24, 25, like just interviewed the world top people in the field. And I feel like he does a good job of looking at it from lots of different perspectives.
Love that. And then Mary Beth Kaplan was asking, can you repeat that book title? It was Wisdom of the Crowd. Do I have that right?
Yeah, Wisdom of the Crowds,
Awesome.
written
And then
around
for
2008.
Great. And then for those of you who are joining, the question for the giveaway, since Michael is so kindly giving away one annual subscription to his Substack, what is one idea you could share more boldly this year? And I think this is really interesting. Like I love how you're talking about perspective and kind of trying to figure out how to orient yourself when there's so many kind of competing ideas. If somebody wants to have bigger, braver ideas this year, but they feel overwhelmed by the noise of everything and maybe they feel inconsistent, what's one small step that they can take this week to upgrade their quality of their thinking and their output?
Okay. Okay. I call this breakthrough knowledge. So we've all had the experience of somebody said something to us that's just one sentence has completely changed how we view things. Or we read a book, Tyler Cowen has a word quake book that like, we just read it and we're like, oh my God, like life is never going to be the same. I view the world differently because of that. So I hold the idea that out there right now, for all of us, there's breakthrough knowledge that just one idea could reorient ourselves. And so, and that's one of the highest leverage things that you could do as a learner, I feel, versus I feel like sometimes we're too much in the algorithms or just following things and then coming back to it. It's all incremental knowledge that once you've been following a certain person, at first they might blow your mind, but then after you've listened to a ton of podcasts or things, it's not quite as much. So one of my favorite examples of this was, picture growing up in a world where everyone believes that the earth is the center of the universe. And then every single person you talk to, literally, you just look up at the sky and see it just circling around us. So it's like, of course, the earth is the center, but it's not. One piece of disconfirming evidence or bigger model can disprove on some level billions of observations. So is it better to like collect? So as a thought leader, it's very easy to get into a cherry picking mode where we just try to prove ourselves right. And I always felt that that's a tragedy because then you're just making yourself less intelligent because you can make yourself believe anything. But if if it's actually not valuable, then you're fooling yourself. Versus if every article, like you could look for breakthrough knowledge where it's like your own hero's journey, where you've had a curiosity, you've explored it, and you come back a different person and you're sharing that with people. That's my personal approach.
Awesome. Amazing. I have one last question for you, and I know that people are leaving their answers to the giveaway question in the chat. So one more time for people who have just joined, Michael's so kindly giving away an annual paid subscription to his fantastic Substack, Blockbuster Blueprint. And then the question for the giveaway, which you could enter down below, is what is one idea you could share more boldly this year? And Michael, my last question for you before you go into the chat and pick the winner is, if you had to break down blockbuster content down to one core mental model, what is it and how does it change the way somebody writes?
Yeah, I'd say, I don't know if it is a mental model, but sometimes the logic of the internet almost gives us a race to the bottom where we're creating content that's just good enough to get ranked by the search engines, but not better. Or it's like, okay, we need to get something out quickly because you need to stay top of mind and the news feeds reward that. But so sometimes there's a race to the bottom. And then like you hear people talk about like they feel like there's so much noise on the internet. And it's like, okay, how do we get in a world where it's like so many people creating noise that they wouldn't want themselves to read. So I feel like the key idea would be creating a work, like having a race to the top. You're trying to create better than you could have before. You're creating a work that you're proud of, that you want everyone in your life to consume, and just those racing towards the top over time has just put you a different trajectory than
Yeah.
otherwise.
And this kind of circles back to what you were talking about earlier, which is like the one kind of the idea to help people grow that isn't obvious is just make great content and be unique and be bold. And I think that that is such a cool piece of your messaging. So I know that we've had some comments down below for some people who have answered your question if you want to pick somebody for the giveaway.
All
And
right.
while you do that, just give some announcements. So if you're new here and you're just joining, this is hour 5 of my Right for Money and Power book launch and giveaway. And I'm chatting with amazing guests like Michael, who are running some fantastic Substacks. And we're talking about ideas around creative power and avoiding gatekeepers and creating our new version of what creative power looks like for us. So, Michael, let me know when you've picked somebody for the giveaway.
All right. I am going to go with W.R. Collins. Be confident in what you do, but more importantly, uplift others and help them. Yeah, I feel
I
like I
love that.
resonate with that one because it's like, I feel like we all have something special to share. And if you don't have confidence in that idea as a starting place, then you're never going to share.
Amazing. And W.R. Collins, if you can DM Michael on Substack, your email address for that annual subscription. And Michael, thank you so much for giving away an annual paid subscription. Everyone else, you absolutely have to go subscribe to Michael's Substack, Blockbuster Blueprint. It is some really great knowledge on there. And then, Michael, is there anything else that you want to share with everybody before we log off?
No, I really, really appreciate you inviting me as a guest. I feel really honored. And I just want to wish you congratulations to you for everything that you're doing. And I think I'm just really inspired by everything you've done in a short period of time on Substack platform. And I really appreciate all the questions you asked. And I look forward to hopefully having more conversations in the future.
Likewise. No, I'm really impressed by just the quality of the nuance that you give, the advice you give to writers and thought leaders. And you truly have had such an inspiring career. And it's been really impressive to kind of hear your thought process through this stuff. So thank you so much, Michael. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And again, everybody, go follow Michael on Blockbuster Blueprint here on Substack. And for those of you who are listening, I will be live again in 15 minutes with Julianne Jules of Friday Night Readers. So we'll see you there. And thanks again, Michael, for joining us.
Thanks, Amy. Bye.
Awesome. Bye.